Hello students, hope you are doing well. So today I am going to start the first lecture of the topic reproduction in organisms. I suppose you will listen it carefully and hope you will ask questions without any hesitation. If any doubt you have while listening the lecture or afterward, do write me on my email that I will share you at the end of the lecture. Students, it is a preliminary chapter or topic, whatever you say, that contains basic definitions and terminologies regarding the events and the processes which are associated with the reproduction, which is a very important characteristic of living organisms. The topic is, as I have told you, the topic will contain the definition of reproduction, types, mode or methods of reproduction, events of reproduction, etc. So let's start the topic from a basic terminology called lifespan. So what is lifespan? When an organism take birth, another process is also get associated with it, that is the death. An organism take the birth, completes its life in the form of its life cycle and get to the essence of the life and into a death. So the period from birth to the natural death of an organism represent its lifespan. What the meaning by natural death? Natural death means when an organism body organs get failure naturally and stop working, so it will called a natural death. It will not include any sudden death or accidental death. For example, if a person is going on a road and a bus ride over it and it death on the spot, that is not its natural death, it is an accidental death. But what is the natural death? The organism has completely lived his life on the earth and get a complete organ failure one by one, and this is called natural death. I hope you will understand this. Every organism has a specific average lifespan. First of all, lifespan is not a property of the organism itself, while it is the property of the complete population or the community of the organism. It means the organism grow, lives for a particular length of time, and the length of time can be referred to as the lifespan for the organism. The lifespan may range from 1 day to 4,000 years or even 11,000 years in some cases. It's amazing to note that there are various organisms and living on the earth, and all the organisms have its own lifespan. For example, you can see in the image that a housefly has its lifespan approximately 1 to 4 months, and a man, that is a human being, has a lifespan approximately 60 to 80 years. Squirrel 6 to 8 years. Jellyfishes belonging to the phylum Coelenterata has its lifespan approximately 1 year. Tortoise can live approximately 1,000 to 100. Tortoise can live its life from 100 to 150 years, and the parrot, a bird, has its lifespan approximately 150 years. A great Indian banyan tree, you will know amazingly, located in the Indian Botanical Garden of Havana, has its lifespan approximately yet not completed its life. It is living for more than 200 years. And on the other hand, another banyan tree living in the Kato Valley of Bangalore is living its life from approximately 90 years. So it's amazing facts. There are some other living beings and their lifespan associated in this table, showing in the table, like an organism. As I told you earlier, the lifespan of an organism can be very small, and in the case of some microorganism, it can be few minutes to few hours also. Like Escherichia coli, a bacteria, has lifespan about 20 minutes only, and at the end, that is showing Larera iridata, an oldest plant found in California, USA, has its lifespan about 11,300 years only. So it's very important characteristic of an organism that each and every organism has different lifespan. Why it is different? Actually, lifespan is dependent upon the life cycle. What the time taken by an organism to complete the life cycle, its life cycle, naturally it will directly proportional to the lifespan of the organism. So, and there is a phases of life. What is phases of life? And when an organism take birth and get to the death, there is a life time period, and the time period of the organism can be divided into different phases, that like juvenile phase, reproductive, or it is also called maturity phase, aging or senescence phase, and death phase. Juvenile phase, this is the phase of an organism's life when an organism develops the capacity to reproduce. If we talk about in the sense of reproduction, the juvenile phase in the case of plants is also called as vegetative phase, while in the animal it is the juvenile phase, but in the plant the juvenile phase is alternatively used by the vegetative phase. So in this period of time, the organism starts to mature its reproductive organs, to develop its reproductive organs, to develop its other metabolic processes, and the metabolic processes in this stage are also very high and take place in very high rates. The second one is maturity, this or reproductive phase. This phase includes the time period when the organism starts reproduction, means all the body organs have been completely matured, and now the organism is able to start the reproduction. Next one is aging and senescence. It can be defined as the progressive deterioration in body of a living being, and it is called aging, while the terminal irreversible stage of aging is known as senescence. So there is a basic difference between aging and senescence. What is aging? Aging can be defined as the progressive deterioration in body of a living being, while the senescence is the terminal irreversible stage of aging. And the death. So death can be defined as the permanent cessation of all vital activities of the body of an organism. Lifespan of as I told you earlier, the mayfly has only 1 day, and housefly have 1 to 4 months, as means from the birth to the death. These organisms have only one, or in the case of housefly it is 1 to 4 months only. So this is the about lifespan of an organism. Now reproduction, we have seen the lifespan. So what is reproduction? Why it is necessary? You have seen that if an organism has taken birth, the death of the organism will also take place after some time, after completing its lifespan. So each and every organism will need to continue its generation, or supposedly every organism will want to continue its generation, to produce its offspring who will represent its presence on the earth. So reproduction is a basic process, and it is a very important process for the continuity of the life on earth. So reproduction is the if we define the reproduction, how we can So we can define the reproduction as the biological process by which new individual organisms called offspring, young ones, there are many alternative words for the term, are produced from their parents. In other terms, reproduction is a fundamental feature of living organisms which involves the transmission of genetic material from one generation to the next, ensuring the survival of species over long period of time. Now, what is the importance of reproduction? You know that there is a large diversity of living organisms on the earth, plants and animals, even microorganisms. All organisms differ in their form and structure. Some plants are small, still others are large. Some animals exist on land, some live in water, some plants can grow in flower pots, and some trees are very large. So there are a large number of processes that are associated with an individual in respect to its survival. These include nutrition, respiration, excretion and transportation. Without these processes, the individual will not be able to sustain its life. On the other hand, there are another processes that is not related to its survival on earth, but for its other purposes, like locomotion is required for the animals to capture its prey, to move from one part to another part of the place, and similarly reproduction is required for the survival of its species on the earth, not for the organism. Please note down that it is the process associated with the survival of the species, the whole of similar kind of animals on the earth. So all organ systems except the reproductive system help the organism to remain alive under different conditions of environment. All organisms grow, and after a different point of life they perish. We have already discussed. Before that, the plants and animals try to continue their species, and the organism produce the individuals like themselves. The process by which the species is continued is called reproduction. So we have already defined the reproduction as reproduction is a fundamental feature of living organisms which involves the transmission of genetic material from one generation to the next, ensuring the survival of species over long periods of time. What is importance of reproduction? So reproduction is an important characteristic feature of living organisms. Why? It is essential life process? No, it is not a life process, because without reproduction an organism can survive, but the continuity of that race and group will not survive. So for the continuity of the species, of the group, of the race on the earth is ensured by the reproduction. Young ones replace the old and dying ones. These young ones feed, grow and reproduce again. In this way, reproduction also helps in increasing the population of the species. Reproduction acts as a vehicle of organic evolution also by transmitting advantageous variations to the offspring. So these are the importance of reproduction. Now, types of reproduction. As you know, there is a large diversity in the biological world, and each organism has evolved its own mechanism to multiply and produce offsprings. So the organism's habitat, its internal physiology and several other factors are collectively responsible for how it reproduces. Based on whether there is a participation of one organism or two in the process of reproduction, there are following two types of reproduction: asexual and sexual. So asexual reproduction is the type of reproduction where a single organism, a single parent is capable to produce its young one with or without the involvement of gamete formation and their but without the fusion of their gametes. Organism can develop the gamete, can form the gamete, but their fusion should be lacking. Their fusion is not there in a asexual reproduction, and there is a change in number of chromosome is also lacking, means change in number of chromosomes by the meiosis or mitosis cell divisions will not take place. The offspring that arise by asexual reproduction from a single cell or from a multicellular organism inherit the genes of that parent, and the progeny produced by these organisms are genetically similar to their parent, exactly similar, so they are referred as genetically clone. Clone is a very important term used for the progenies produced by the asexual reproduction. It's a term that is generally asked in the examination, means as like define the clone, what do you mean by clone. So always learn that clone are the organism which resembles to their parents genetically exactly. So benefits of asexual reproduction. The most important benefit of the asexual reproduction is that the progeny developed by the asexual reproductions are the clone of their parents. Mostly asexual reproduction can be very rapid. This is an advantage for many organisms. It allows these organisms to crowd out other organisms that reproduce more slowly. Bacteria, for example, if we take a bacteria may divide several times per hour, and consider if you take 100 bacteria in a petri dish, it can produce millions of bacterial cells in a single hour, in a few hours. So however, most bacteria do not live under ideal conditions. If they did, the entire surface of the planet would soon be covered with them. So mostly instead their reproduction is kept in check by limited resources like and predators and their own waste also. This is true for all other organisms as well. So there are two most important benefits. That first one, the progeny resembles to their parents, and second one, the asexual reproduction is important for the rapid population growth of the organism. Even one organism can make a whole population by the asexual reproduction. Here in asexual reproduction, either male or female species can produce progeny, as it does not require the involvement of two parents. And asexual reproduction is used by the organisms to save them from the extinction. So this is also a very important point to be noted. And asexual reproduction also very important, as it consumes very less time and very less energy of the organism for the reproduction. So these are the important benefits of asexual reproduction. As you've seen that individuals leave its progeny by asexual or sexual means, similarly there are modes of asexual reproduction. That means organisms choose to reproduce asexually by different means. Some of them are shown here, like fission, budding, regeneration, fragmentation, spore formation or sporulation, and vegetative propagation. This is to note that some texts refer the vegetative propagation as a different or as a separate kind of reproduction, but here we included it into the asexual reproduction, and it is asexual reproduction, whether you say that it is asexual reproduction in plants. So let's go and discuss each and every mode of reproduction which are shown here at least. So first one is fission. Fission can be simply called as breakdown, and it is very primitive type of reproduction. Even bacteria uses fission for its mode of reproduction. During the fission, an organism just divides itself amitotically or mitotically to almost equal halves, giving rise to two offsprings. And after this process, when the process completed, the parent cell loses its identity. Mostly there are two kinds of fission on the basis of axis of division of the parent body. It can be transverse fission or longitudinal fission. We will see it later. But how many number of offspring will produce after the fission? The fission can be binary or multiple fission. Binary fission is represented by very simplest organism, as shown in the example like in amoeba. Amoeba is a very simple organism, very single. It is a protozoa, eukaryotic cell. It is a protozoa, and it do not have any fixed shape. As you know, it uses its pseudopodia for the capturing of prey, and it has very soft pellicle. So if we consider amoeba for study of the fission, if amoeba undergo binary fission, and the binary fission in amoeba take place in two steps. First one is karyokinesis, that is the division of nucleus, and second one is cytokinesis. So in this division, you will see that two similar individuals will be formed by a single parent. A mature amoeba cell is larger. Its nucleus elongates and gradually divides amitotically into two nucleus within a single cell, and the process called karyokinesis, that is division of the nucleus. You can see in the second images the enlargement and elongation of the nucleus is taking place here, and in the third the nucleus is completely dividing, and in the fourth there is a cytokinesis process is taking place. Cytokinesis means division of cytoplasm. So after the division of nucleus, that is after the karyokinesis, the division of nucleus, the division of cytoplasm take place, and later on two daughter cells produces from the fission of a single body of amoeba. So there are transverse and longitudinal binary fission, as I told earlier that we will discuss it. So if we take example of paramecium, as shown in the diagram, the body of paramecium divides on a single plane, in a single but transverse. It is a horizontal to the surface or transverse to the surface. So it is a transverse binary fission. Binary fission, as only two organisms are getting produced after the process of fission. And if we take the example of Euglena at the right side, the body of Euglena divides longitudinal to the surface or longitudinal to the body of its body. So it is a longitudinal binary fission. Next type of fission is multiple fission. In multiple fission, more than two daughter cells are formed after fission, and here the nucleus of organism replicates first and then cytokinesis occurs. At one time, more than two daughter cells are produced. For example, in paramecium, you can see here in paramecium a schizon cell is present, that after the infection in the body, when it enters into the body of an host, just protect itself by forming a cyst around it, and the process called as encystment. Within this cyst, the nucleus of the plasmodium divides several times to give rise a large number of daughter cells. The nucleus forms the cell membrane here together, and when the cyst is ruptured, a large number of progeny get produced. So it is very common example for the multiple fission as shown here in the Plasmodium. Next topic, mode of asexual reproduction is the budding. So budding is the type of asexual reproduction in which a new organism pro-develops from an outgrowth or protuberance or bud. The terms are used alternatively due to the cell division at one particular site. Budding can be also of two types: exogenous budding that take place outside the body of and the outer surface of the of organism, and the endogenous or internal budding that take place inner surface or inside the body of organism. So if we take the example of exogenous budding, it generally take place in yeast, hydra, cycon. Also some sponges perform budding exogenously too, like in cycon. So if we consider the example of yeast or hydra, both are similar. You can see the images. So if we take the example of either of the organism, the mature organism, like in yeast cell, it is, you can see that it is larger and spherical in shape, so more accurately oval in shape. So one or more bulb-like projection arises from the cell membrane. The nucleus of the parent cell divides, and in the second image you can see, and one daughter nuclei passes in the bud. Later on the bud get enlarges, and in the case of yeast there are a chain of buds get forms, but in the hydra the chain of bud is not formed, and after some time when the buds get mature or completes into a new individual, it detaches from the body of organism. So these are two very important examples of exogenous or external budding in hydra and yeast. Budding can also be endogenous. Such type of budding is generally common in freshwater sponges like in cycon and spongilla. So in these sponges, budding takes place inside the body of the organism, that is endogenously, and this type of budding is generally called as gemmulation, as the bud are called gemmules. So gemmules are tough coated dormant clusters of embryonic cell, as you see in the image. So freshwater sponges, as I say, are the multicellular marine living species of the kingdom Animalia and phylum Porifera. So the species of this kingdom include sponges, and these sponges generally perform gemmulation or internal budding for the purpose of asexual reproduction. Now let's take a glance over the differences between fission and budding. What are the main differences between fission and budding? During fission, no buds or external outgrowths were formed, while budding, a bud or external outgrowth. In the case of sponges, freshwater sponges, it is internal outgrowth that forms, and it develops into a new individual. During the fission, two young ones or more than, in the case of multiple fission, more than two young ones are formed of the same size, as the division of body is symmetrical. But in the case of budding, a single young one forms, which is very much smaller to its parent, as the division of body is asymmetrical. Parent body during the fission loses its identity, but in the case of budding, it maintains its identity. It is able to maintain its identity. Now, Fragmentation is also a very important mode of asexual reproduction in some cyanobacteria, molds, lichens, and the Spirogyra is a green algae which is a well-known example for fragmentation. During fragmentation, the body of an organism breaks into several fragments which later develop into a complete organism due to the result of rapid cell division in these fragments, and the cell division is of mitotic type. As I told that this type of reproduction is common among some fungi and plants also. Most lichens which form a symbiotic relationship with fungus and photosynthetic algae or bacteria, generally cyanobacteria, are able to perform fragmentation. In this image you can clearly see the process of fragmentation in a Spirogyra. A body of Spirogyra can be recognized by the several number of paranoids in the chain of cells, and when the Spirogyra broken down into several fragments, each and every fragment is able to give rise a new individual. Now next is regeneration. Regeneration is the modified form of fragmentation. We can say it is known as the process that makes genome, cell organs, organisms and ecosystems resistant after alteration of damages. Generally, starfishes are considered as the very good example for regeneration. All species that live on earth can regenerate, but only a few species use it as a method of asexual reproduction, thus producing a new individual for their body. If we see the examples, there are two examples are given. One is for starfishes, where a arm of the starfish broken down from the body, and the arm itself is able to give rise the new starfish. But in the case of gecko, means in the case of wall lizard, you have observed that if the tail of the wall lizard get broken down or get cut off, the tail is not able to give rise a complete wall lizard, but the wall lizard get its tail back. So regeneration is very important for the formation of new organs of an organism, and our bodies also have some extent for the regeneration. If we have some cut on in our skin, it get filled by the rapid cell division, but we are not able to regenerate our a new organism by the process of regeneration. This is because of the complexity of our body. And another very good mode of asexual reproduction is sporulation or spore formation. It is a method of asexual reproduction generally found in non-flowering plants such as fungi and bacteria. In this, bacteria is not the plant, such as fungi and bacteria. In this, the parent plant generates thousands of spores which individually grow in a plant. Spores can be defined as a single-celled minute propagules which are able to give rise a new individual after propagation. Spores in the case of fungi, for example, if we take the fungi, spores can be formed endogenously in a sac called sporangium, and such type of spores are called sporangiosspores. Like in the case of Rhizopus, you can see Rhizopus has a sporangium in the right side image, and inside this sporangium several number of spores are formed, which after rupture of the sporangium, when get liberated, give rise multiple number of hyphae and mycelium. While spores can also formed exogenously, that is outside a sac without the formation of sac, like Conidia of Aspergillus. There are several types of spores formed in different species of organisms, like asexual spores, that is exogenous spores found by Conidia, Oidea, sexual spores such as zoospores and zygote, vegetative spores like chlamydospores. You have already learned it in your earlier classes. So there was a topic missed out. We should have to clearly differentiate out between the fragmentation and regeneration. Actually, fragmentation and regeneration are quite similar to each other, quite or even very much similar to each other, but quite different from each other. If we see what is the main differences between fragmentation and regeneration, there are some differences illustrated, that like fragmentation take place in the multicellular organisms having simple body organization, while regeneration take place in a fully differentiated multicellular organism which have complex body organization. In fragmentation, each and every piece of body produces new organism, but in regeneration it is not necessary always that every piece of the body may develop into a new individual new organism. Like in the case of wall lizard, the tail of the lizard is not able to give rise a complete individual, but the tail get back due to the several divisions. No specialized cells are involved during the fragmentation, but in the case of regeneration, several specialized cells proliferate and form a mass of cell, and each cell of mass that is proliferated differentiate to a new cell and tissue. There are some asexual reproductive structure we have already studied, like zoospores of Chlamydomonas, Conidia of Penicillium, birds of Hydra, gemmules of sponges. Now, vegetative propagation. So what is vegetative propagation? We can define it as a type of asexual reproduction found in plants. Actually, vegetative propagation is a mode of asexual reproduction where non-reproductive parts of plants are involved in the production of new organisms, such as roots, leaves. These are not made for the reproduction, but they can reproduce a new organism asexually. So vegetative propagation is very important phenomena of propagation of plants, and you have already witnessed the propagation of rose plant with the help of their stem by the process called cutting. If we see that vegetative propagation can be of two types, natural or artificial. Natural vegetative propagation is the vegetative propagation where human intervention is not allowed, where human intervention do not take place. Like plants have several type of organs, runners, suckers, corms, bulbs, which are the modification of the either root, shoot, which are able to give rise a new individual. Similarly, vegetative propagation can be artificial, where human exploit the ability of a plant being vegetatively propagate for their own purposes. So in natural vegetative propagation, there are several type of organs like rhizomes, runners, tubers. I have already mentioned, give rise a new individual without any human intervention. But in these organisms, some of the organs are here explained, like rhizomes. Vegetative propagation may occur naturally through the development of rhizomes. What are rhizomes? So rhizomes are typically grow horizontally modified stems, which are typically grow and horizontally along the surface or the beneath the ground, either on the surface or somewhat beneath the ground. Actually, rhizomes are storage site for growth of substances. Proteins and starch-like substances are stored in the rhizomes. As rhizomes extend, roots and shoots may arise from segments of rhizomes and develop into new plants. There are very many examples of vegetative propagation through rhizomes in say certain grasses, in lilies, in ginger, turmeric, etc. Second very good example of vegetative propagation is by runners, or sometimes called stolons. So they are actually similar to rhizomes, but they grow just below the soil surface. Unlike rhizomes, they originate from the existing stems. So as runners grow, they develop roots from buds located at the nodes or their tips. Intervals between nodes or internodes are more widely spaced in runners than in the rhizomes. In the rhizomes, there is a very less space between the nodes and internodes, but in the case of runners, there is a wide space between the nodes and internodes in the runners. There is example of strawberry runners. You can clearly see the runners which are grown here from a parent body and giving rise the new young ones, new plants here. Tubers are very good examples of vegetative propagation. You have studied it earlierly. You are here in the image, you can see that the eyes of the potato is a very good example of vegetative propagation by tuber. Actually, tubers are vegetative organs. They can either develop from the stem or root. Stem tubers, if we say, arise from the rhizomes or the runners that become swollen from storing nutrients. In the case of potato that is shown here, you know very well that it is formed due to the accumulation of starch in the stem, and it is the modification of stem as it has several nodes and internodes present on them. While sweet potatoes and dahlias are the example of root tubers where vegetative propagation take place, tubers formed by the roots. Bulbs are also very good example where vegetative propagation take place with the help of round swollen parts of a stem that are typically found underground, like in garlic, onion. And bulb consists of a bud that is surrounded by layers of fleshy scale like leaves, and it is also a source of food storage and provide nourishment to the new plants. Corms are also bulb-like structures which are underground stems, but there is a very much difference between the bulb and corm. That in a bulb, the appearance of the bulb, you have already seen here that it is inside the garlic you found some leafy appearance, but here in the case of corm, the bulbs have in solid stem tissues. The tissue is there very solid, and mostly we get confused between the corms and bulb to the appearance, physical appearance. The major difference we see in the corm and the bulb, that as I told earlier, that's corm is a solid tissue, contains solid tissue but internally, but bulb have only layers of leaves. Here corms of some gladiolus is shown, and we have, beside the gladiolus, taro and crocus also develop bulbs, corms. Artificial vegetative propagation is the vegetative propagation in which human interventions involved, where humans exploit the properties of plants of being vegetatively propagate. There are several methods that can be applied for vegetative propagation in plants, like cutting, where a small part of a stem or leaf is cut off and planted. Adventitious roots develop from the cuttings and new plants form. Rose plants are generally planted, and in sometimes to initiate the cutting or to increase the formation of plants from the cuttings, several hormones are applied to the cuts, so the development get induces for the root formation. Next one is grafting. Grafting is the method of joining vascular tissues of two different plants one over other. In grafting, a desired cutting or scion is the part of plant which is grafted over a fixed plant. Scion is attached to the stem of another plant, that is called as stalk, and stalk is the rooted in the ground. The tissue stems system of the cutting become grafted into or integrated with the tissue system of the base plant over time. There are several types of grafting shown here in the images, like there are bar grafting. More than one scion is grafted over a single bark here. In the case of side grafting, a single scion is grafted sidewise in a plant. Similarly, there is a bud grafting, or called T-bud grafting, where a bud is grafted in the bark or in a single cut in the stalk. Layering is a very common example of vegetative propagation that is done artificially. It involves the bending of plant branches or stems so that they touch the ground. When these plant branches touch the ground, the adventitious roots are extend from these structures, which develops into a new plant, and after that we can detach this plant from the parent plant and can plant it anywhere. There are also several types of layering, like in air layering, a small cut is given to a plant to remove the bark of the plant, and mud and soil is applied to cover the cut and tied in such a way that they can get the oxygen and water also. And after some time rooting initiates here, and which can be, and so when the rooting initiates, we can cut off this part and can plant it anywhere else. A simple layering is shown here. The previous one was air layering. Simple layering is shown here. You can see in the simple layering, simply a branch is bent and buried in the ground and covered with the soil. After some time, the rooting initiates. In the tip layering, only the tip of a plant is buried in the ground. Mound and stool layerings. In a serpentine layering, when a single stem is buried several times in the soil, then it is called a serpentine layering. Plantlets, you have here about the leaves of bryophyllum, which have ability to give rise a new plant when it fall on the ground due to the presence of some buds in the notches of the leaf. It is also called as a azuba plant. due to its property. These are vegetative, so plantlets are the vegetative structure developed from the some plant leaves. These miniature young plants arise from the meristem tissue located along leaf margins. Upon maturity, plantlets develop in, roots and drop from the leaves. Another example of the such type of vegetative propagation is kalanchoe, and plantlets has a property that plantlets may also develop from the runners of certain plants such as spider plants. And the last one is tissue culture, which is also very good example of vegetative propagation by human, but it is a very modern type of vegetative propagation. During what is tissue culture, this technique involves the culturing of plant cells that may be taken from different parts of a parent plant. The tissue is placed in a sterilized container and nurtured in a special medium until a mass of cells known as callus is formed. Then callus is cultured in a hormone-laden medium and eventually develops into plantlets when planted. And these plantlets, when planted, mature into fully grown plant. The steps of tissue culture for a banana tree, banana plant, is shown in this image, which is sidewise. You can see here how a small explant or a small tissue of the plant is taken from the mother plant, and here a plant corm is taken. Then it is kept inside a sterilized container in a nutrient containing medium where a mass of callus is formed. Then it multiplied, shooting and rooting initiates. Then it is transferred to for the primary hardening in the lab conditions. Then it is transferred into some small pots and then to the field. So it is a very good technique nowadays to grow plants from the small tissue or the small cell of the plant. So now sexual reproduction. But before sexual reproduction, actually I forgot to mention a thing. Mostly regarding the vegetative propagation, you can understand how rapid growth can take place in the sexual reproduction by taking the examples of Eichhornia, water hyacinth. In the water hyacinth, offsets are formed, and due to this formation of offsets, multiple and rapid growth of the plant take place. And if a small portion of Eichhornia plant is placed in a pond, you can see that a large number of plants formed in a very short period of time, that it can cover the whole pond, and allowing the not allowing the mixing of atmospheric oxygen into the water, and hence the large number of death of the aquatic organism including fishes take place. And due to this property of this Eichhornia plants, they are considered as the terror of Bengal. So this is the condition of vegetative propagation. So now next type of next type of reproduction is sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction involves formation of the male and female gametes either by the same individual or by different individual of the opposite sex. Here the gametes fuse to form zygote, which develops to form a new individual. What are the advantages of sexual reproduction? So sexual reproduction have actually many disadvantages, like it takes a lot of time. It takes place. It takes consumption of very much consumption of energy. But even sexual reproduction is preferred by the nature, as the greater genetic variation, which allows the species to maintain a large gene pool, can be taken place in the sexual reproduction. Genetic variation also allow organism to cope with selection pressure and evolve to changing environmental situation. Here the mixing of traits take place in during the reproduction that also create variation, and the very good phenomena called evolution is also take place only due to the process of sexual reproduction. So sexual reproduction is very much beneficial for organism. So if we take a look over the diversity of organisms, plants, animals or fungi, they show, though they are different so greatly in external morphology, internal structure and physiology, when it comes to sexual mode of reproduction, they share a similar pattern. So let us first discuss what features are common to these diverse organisms. First of all organisms have to reach a certain stage of growth and maturity in their life before they can reproduce sexually. That period of growth is called juvenile phase in the case of animals, and vegetative phase in the case of juvenile phase in the case of animals, and vegetative phase in the case of plants. We have already discussed about these terms in our first slide. The end of juvenile or vegetative phase, which marks the beginning of the reproductive phase, can be seen easily in higher plants when flowering initiates in them. This is to note that the flowering period and flowering pattern varies with the species to species in plants, and there are three categories of plants can be classified or found. First one are called as annual plants. For the annual plants, the production of flowers and seeds is culmination of their very existence. Soon after annual plants produce mature seeds, they die, having exhausted themselves from sprouting, growing foliage and flowers, and finally produce viable seeds in just one growing season. So one could argue that the whole life of a plant is geared towards one thing, that is reproduction, and annual plants completes their life cycle in 1 year, and then must start from seeds or cutting the next year. The mother plants die, but she may have left hundreds or even thousands of seeds to carry on her legacy. For annual plants, one generation per year is the norm, so they have a life cycle of one growing season. Our bean seed, in the discussion, we can take bean seeds is an annual plant, and other annual plants may include several crop plants like wheat or paddy, and some garden annual plants include zinnia, cosmos and broccoli, etc. Second category of plants are biennials that complete their life cycle over 2 growing seasons. The first season they grow only foliage, commonly a low growing rosette of leaves. The second growing season they form flowers and produce seeds. Then the mother plant dies. Common biennial flowers include foxgloves and Canterbury bells. Some variety of saccharum are also included in the biennial plants. Saccharum officinarum. The third one are the plants live for at least 3 years, assuming wild animals and poor weather don't kill them first. Mostly horticulturists don't often talk about perennial plants life cycle. Rather you may hear about a particular perennial's lifespan. For example, You might hear that columbines are relatively short-lived, so you should plan to replant every few years. Perennial plants continue to grow and flower for more than 2 years, and many will live for decades. However, if we wanted to talk about the perennial's life cycle, we would need to look at how long it takes a particular plant to cycle from seed to seed. As with annuals and biennials, perennials produce flowers that, if successfully pollinated from seeds, the difference is that the mother plant doesn't die after producing seed. If we define a life cycle as time it takes a plant to go from seed to seed, you can see that perennials life cycle can vary widely. For many common perennials, completing a life cycle usually takes from 2 to perhaps 5 years or more. For example, if you plant a cornflower seed, you will get only foliage the first few years, with flowers and seed coming in subsequent years. If the first seed is formed the third season, then we would say the plant has a 3-year life cycle from seed to seed. So perennials are the plants that live for at least 3 years, assuming wild animals and poor weather don't kill them first. As I told earlier, they will come back year after year from their own overwintering roots, even though their foliage may die to the ground after frost. So this is to note that the word perennial is commonly used to describe long-lived herbaceous plants, those with green non-woody stems. In temperate regions, most perennials die back to the ground in the winter, then sprout from the roots or crowns in the spring. Woody plants like shrubs and trees are also perennials in that they grow for many years. However, in common uses, a distinction is made between woody and non-woody perennials. The word perennial is reserved for herbaceous non-woody plants. Woody plants whose above ground parts persist through the winter are categorized as shrubs, trees, or woody vines. So there are many unusual plants that exhibit unusual flowering in them. Flowering phenomena in some of plants such as bamboo species flower only once in their lifetime, and it is generally after 50 to 100 years produce large number of fruits and die. A very good example for these plants is Strobilanthes kunthiana, called as Neela Kuranji. These plants flowers once in 12 years. As many of you would know, this plant flowered in 1982, then 1994, then during September-October 2006, and it was also reported that it flowered in 2018. In the Kerala and Karnataka region, a special Karnataka region, and Karnataka region, and you can say that you will see that the tracts of hilly areas in Kerala and Karnataka and Tamil Nadu also, blue stretches and is observed when these Neela Kuranji plants flowered, and they attract a large number of tourists. In this slide you can see that the flower of Strobilanthes varieties, and 3 seasons are shown here. When the Neela Kuranji was flowered in 1982, then in 1994 and 2006. Flower of bamboo plant is also shown at the right. You can see there are several weeds such as dandelion can produce more than one generation in a growing season. Their life cycle may be just a few months. On the other hand, The agave or century plant may need to grow for up to 20 years to accumulate the energy reserves necessary to produce its 20 to 40 foot seed stalks. Even more remarkable, some types of bamboo are thought to have bloom cycles of over 100 years. If it may take for them to 100 years to bloom, then they won't bloom again for another 100 years. Of course, the lifespan of such kind is difficult for scientists to verify, and so there is very important condition, very important situation, then how we can define this condition where flowering occurs more than once, and what we would call the interflowering period in such conditions. Like plants, in animals, the juvenile phase is followed by morphological and physiological changes prior to active reproductive behavior. Similarly, the reproductive phase is also variable duration in different organisms. The majority of mammals become sexually receptive and ovulate spontaneously at defined intervals. The female will only allow the male to mate during a restricted time coinciding with ovulation. Inefficiency of reproduction is attributable in part to prolonged periods of estrus. Thus, the female might need to be bred several times to augment the chances of conception. For example, mare and dogs. So, breeding according to the time of breeding, period of the breeding, we can classify the animals in following two categories. First one, seasonal breeders. They include the animals which reproduce at particular period of the year, such as frog, lizard, some of the birds, deers, most of the birds even, and deers. And next one is continuous breeders. These animals can breed or mate throughout the year, and these includes human and apes like chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, gibbons. They can have a child at any time of the year. They have property of conception at any type of time of year. They are not like the seasonal breeders. Among continuous breeders, the majority of mammals become sexually receptive, express estrus, and ovulate spontaneously at defined intervals. So the female will only allow the male to mate during a restricted time that coincide with their ovulation. The females of placental mammals, if we see, exhibit cyclical changes in the activity of the ovary and the accessory ducts, as well as hormones during the reproductive phase. Hence, we can classify these mammals into estrus cycle, into animals having estrus cycle or menstrual cycle. So, what are the differences between estrus cycle and menstrual cycle? If we talk about the estrus cycle occur in non-primates such as cows, dogs, etc. While menstrual cycle, it occurs in primates like monkeys, apes, including human being only. In estrus cycle, a short period of estrus or heat is followed by anestrus or passive period, while the menstrual cycle is a long period of cycle, and it consists three phases generally: most menstrual, proliferative, and secretory phases. Estrus cycle is during estrus cycle, blood does not flow in the cycle, but in menstrual cycle is represented by the flow of the blood in last few days of the cycle. Here it is a spelling mistake. Blood does not flow in this cycle. In estrus, the broken endometrium is reabsorbed. In estrus cycle, the broken endometrium is passed out during menstrual cycle. You will study these terms and these phenomena in detail in chapter reproduction in human beings, human reproduction. Sex urge is increased during estrus period, but in the case of menstrual cycle, no any sex urge is reported during menstruation. And it's also to note that the female in the exhibiting estrus cycle permits copulation only during the estrous period, but in the case of menstrual period, female does not allow any copulation. So these are the some conditions, some introductions or phenomena related to the sexual reproduction. Now let's take a look over what are the events that take place in the sexual reproduction. So after attainment of maturity, all sexually reproducing organisms exhibit events and processes that have remarkable fundamental similarities, and these events and processes follows a similar pattern, a similar regular sequences in each and every organisms. Sexual reproduction is characterized by the fusion of the male and female gametes, as we have already discussed in previous lectures, previous slides. The formation of zygote and embryogenesis, these two are also very important phenomena or events of the sexual reproduction. So to study the sexual reproduction conveniently, all the sequential events that take place during the sexual reproduction can be classified in three basic or distinct stages, and these stages are pre-fertilization stage or pre-fertilization event, fertilization event, and post-fertilization events. The pre-fertilization event of sexual reproduction comprise of all the sexual events that take place prior to the fusion of gametes. There are two main events that take place during this major event. First one is gametogenesis and second one is gamete transfer. So let's see what are the gametogenesis. Gametogenesis refers to the formation of male and female gametes. And what are gametes? So gamete can be defined as mature haploid male or female germ cells which is able to unite with each other of opposite sex in sexual reproduction to form a zygote. I hope you people are familiar with the terms haploid and diploid, but here let's once discuss about these terms. Actually, haploid condition can be represented or can be defined as the condition when an cell of an organism contain a single set of chromosomes, while the diploid has a complete genome, a complete set of chromosomes in them. For example, in the case of human being, if we see human cell has 46 chromosomes in them, that is 23 pairs of chromosomes, and this condition is represented by 2n and it is diploid condition. But when the gamete formation take place, each gamete possesses a single set of chromosomes, and hence the cells have only 23 and 23 of chromosomes in each gametes. In the case, if we see at a glance, in different organism forms different kinds of gametes in them, and here gametes can be homogametes or isogamous gamous condition, or can form heterogametes. So in the case of homogametes, or the situation is also called isogamous condition, so gametes are similar in appearance and size, and here this is not easier to categorize the gametes into male and female gametes. For example, in the case of Cladophora, we will have the male and female gametes are similar to each other in their appearance, size and shape. You can see here in the image. At the other side, some organisms have some organisms forms the gametes which are not identical in size, shape and appearance, and here it is a distinct dissimilarity, distinct categories of male and females. Anyone can categorize the male and female gametes easily by size, by observing its size, shape and appearance. Heterogametes also can be of two types. First one is anisogametes, that is an isogamous condition where both male and female gametes are motile, but female gametes are larger in size, as the black color one is representing, while the male gametes are generally smaller than the female gametes. And for example, Chlamydomonas and the members of class Basidiomycetes of fungus is are very good example of an isogamous condition. And the heterogametes can be oogamous, where male and female gametes are characterized by their motility. In this situation, male gametes are motile, and but the female gametes are non-motile. And in this condition, male gametes follow the male gametes go to the female gametes for the purpose of fertilization. This is to note that the female gametes are usually greater in size, and the human beings are very good example for oogamous and conditions. This is to note that male gametes are called as antherozoite or sperm in the condition of oogamous condition, while female gametes are called ovum or eggs. Now, what is sexuality in organism? Sexuality can be defined as the phenomenon of occurrence of male and female sex organs in same or different body of an individual. Sexuality is also very important feature that is responsible for distinction in organisms at the basis of sexual reproduction. Here we can see that an organism can be homothallic or monoecious, or heterothallic or and dioecious. Homothallic situation or monoecious situation is are the terms representing the bisexual condition of an organism. The situation when male and female sex organs are found in a single body of an organism. On the other hand, the heterothallic or dioecious condition is the condition where male and the female sex organs are found in different individuals, like in human beings. And generally, heterothallic dioecious conditions or unisexual condition, the terms can be used alternatively. The organisms show clear distinction in male and female body, and this phenomena is called as sexual dimorphism. And the most example of the sexual dimorphism can be seen in birds and several mammals, including human beings, where male and the female body has a clear distinction. Even there are behavioral distinction is also found in the male and female body. This is to note that there is another condition also called hermaphrodite, that represent condition when an organism is bisexual but exchange their gametes for fertilization. This situation is represented by earthworm, for example. In a unisexual flower, male flower has only stamens, and these flowers are called as staminate, while the female flower has only pistils, and these flowers are termed as pistillate. Diversity of sexuality in organism can be seen in the image taken from the NCERT book. So if we see, here is the earthworm, and earthworm possesses both testes and ovary in the same body, that is male and female sex organs in the same body, and this condition is called bisexual condition. But earthworm is hermaphrodite, as it performs copulation and exchanges the male and female gametes. Similarly, in the case of Pheretima posthuma, that was in the earthworm, Pheretima posthuma. In the case of cockroaches, the scientific name of cockroaches is Periplaneta americana. In the case of Periplaneta, you can see a different, very much clarification in male and female organs, and male and female organs are found in distinct bodies. Here male sex is found in different body, and the female in different body. Similarly, if we see in the case of plants like Cara, the Oogonium and the Antheridium, in the case of Cara, is found in the same organ. Oogonium represents the female sex organ, while the Antheridium represents the male sex organ. In the case of Mertensia is a bryophyte, and here male and female body are found different, distinctly associated. In the male body, Anthridiophore are found, on which Anthridium is developed, and while in the case of female body, Archegoniophore are found, on which the Archegonium develops. And here example of flower of sweet potato, which is by bisexual flower, where stamen and carpel are found in the same flower. Stamen represent the male reproductive system, and called as androecium, represented by androecium, while the carpel represent the gynoecium, that is female sex organs. So how does the gametogenesis take place? Gametogenesis take place by the cell division, either of mitotic or meiotic type, in specialized cells in the body of an organism. In an organism which have haploid type of parental body, gametogenesis take place by the mitotic division. For instance, if you have studied the haplontic life cycle of a NCERT of class 11th, you would know that an organism which have haploid type of body, which means the cells of the organism have a single set of chromosomes. So in such type of organisms, gametogenesis take place by the mitotic division. These organisms include fungi, algae, and bryophytes, and as well as in the case of animals, they are some in the case, and the bacteria belonging to the kingdom Monera. Similarly, in the case of organisms that have diplontic life cycle, or haplodiplontic also, the gametogenesis take place by the mean of meiotic division in the specialized cells called as meiocytes or gametocytes. Gymnosperms and angiosperms, and in the case of animals and human beings, are the good examples of the gametogenesis by the meiotic divisions. Gamete transfer. Gamete transfer is a very important step, very important event of sexual reproduction. This is to note that for the purpose of fertilization, it is required that male and female gamete come to each other, and to fulfill this purpose, the gamete transfer event take place. Gamete transfer is the gamete transfer in different organisms, like and in take place by different means. For example, in the case of plants, it takes place by the mean of pollination, where the pollen grain called as male gametophyte carrying male gametes with the help of any medium like air or water or insects fall upon the stigma of the same flower or the different flower, and the event is called as pollination. While in the case of animals, the gamete transfer takes place with the help of copulation. Copulation. This is to note that the gamete transfer required the movement of gametes towards each other. Gametes have flagella for the movement, and they require a medium for the purpose of their movement with the help of flagella. In the case of an organism possesses oogamous situation, only the male gamete moves in a liquid medium with the help of its flagella towards the female gamete called ovum. And this is also to note that in the case of oogamous organism, to compensate the loss during transport, a large number of male gametes are produced, while in the case of an organism in which the fertilization takes place outside the body of the organism, like in the case of frog, both the male and female gametes are traveled, and gametes are motile, and the fusion takes place by the medium with the help of the water as the water. So the next very important event of the sexual reproduction is the fertilization. It is a very crucial step. It can be defined as the fusion of male and female gametes to give rise a zygote. The process is also termed as syngamy. This is to note that the fertilization can be external or internal. That is, the fertilization can take place inside the body of an organism, that is internal fertilization, or outside the body of the organism, like in a water medium, as I mentioned earlier in the case of frog and other amphibians. It is external. So what is the difference between external and internal fertilization? So external fertilization, in the external fertilization, syngamy occurs outside of the body of organism, while in the case of internal fertilization, it occurs inside the body of organism. To ensure that fertilization, this is very important in the case of external fertilization, that synchrony in between the sexes is very important for the purpose of fusion of the gametes. To ensure this synchronization between the gametes, a large number of gametes take place and are formed and released into surrounding medium in the case of external fertilization. But in the case of internal fertilization, the production of large number of female gametes is not required, as this is sure that the ovum has its own location, but the large number of male gametes are formed and released, so that fertilization chances of fertilization, probability of the fertilization can be increased. Organisms exhibiting external fertilization produces large number of offsprings, but offsprings are vulnerable to predators. So most of the offsprings are captured by the predators for their nutritional purposes, and hence organisms produced by the external fertilization are controlled by their population by the predators. The external fertilization are exhibited by bony fishes, amphibians, while the internal fertilization in the birds, mammals, earthworm, etc. So what are the post fertilization events that take place in the in a sexual reproduction? So events that take place after the fusion of gametes are called as post fertilization events. This include formation of embryo from the zygote and the development of embryo into the new organism. What is the fate of zygote? First of all, what is the zygote? So zygote is the single cell formed by the fusion of two gametes, that is male and female gametes. Every organism, including human beings, begin its life from single cell zygote. So always remember that as the gametes are haploid, gametes are always haploid. Similarly, zygotes are always diploid. Zygotes are an important link between the previous and next generation of an organism. What is the fate of zygote? So in organisms belonging to fungi and algae, zygote develops a thick wall around it that is resistant to desiccation and damage and undergoes in a period of rest before germination. While in the case of other organism that possess haplontic life cycle, zygote undergo meiosis and forms meiospore that further propagate to develop new organisms which are haploid. In higher organisms, it undergoes several mitotic division and give rise an embryo. So embryogenesis is the you can say first event that take place after the fertilization, that is after the formation of zygote due to the fusion of male and female gametes. Embryogenesis can be defined as the formation or development of embryo from a single cell zygote. It takes place as a result of mitotic division in zygote, several mitotic division in zygote, which is a rapid multiplication, and further these cells are differentiated to give rise another kind of cell. So cell division and differentiation lead to the formation of embryo. Cells are divided to increase their number, while cell differentiation results in the modification of cells to give rise a specialized group of cell, tissues and organs to form a new organism. Animals are categorized into two vital groups, oviparous and viviparous. This is based upon the development of zygote takes place outside the body of the female parent or inside. That is whether the organism will lay a fertilized or unfertilized egg or give birth to young ones. So in viviparous organism, an organism give birth directly to a young one. So the development it take place inside the body of the female in this condition, and the examples are most of the mammals including human beings. Here it is to note that the survival of viviparous organisms are greater because they are less vulnerable towards the predator, and this is due to the proper parental care they possess. But in the case of oviparous organism, they lay fertilized or unfertilized eggs, and the eggs are covered by a calcareous shell and laid in a safe environment for incubation, after which a young one hatches out. Mostly these organisms are vulnerable to the predators. The eggs of the organisms are carried by the predators for their nutritional requirements. And the examples of the oviparous animals are birds and reptiles, but this is to note that reptiles are the special case of organism. They are ovoviviparous. So one once try to search this term ovoviviparous. This is the assignment to you. Post fertilization changes in flowering plants. In flowering plants, fertilization and formation of zygote take place inside the ovules, and after the fertilization, the sepals and petals of the flowers wither, that is dry, and fall off. In the members of Solanaceae, this is to note that sepals remain attached with the fruit. You have observed the brinjal or tomato. If not, go in the kitchen and observe the tomato or brinjal. It will have some sepals attached with the fruit. As a zygote develop into embryo, the ovules develop into seeds, and the ovary develops into fruit, and the wall of ovary become thick and fleshy, and so it is called as pericarp. Seeds have two options: either they can germinate directly if the favorable condition is there, but if not, they can undergo in the dormant condition and cease their metabolic activities and wait for the favorable conditions to arrive, and after that, when they get favorable conditions, germinate into new plants. There are some unusual modes of reproduction. First one is apomixis. It is an asexual reproduction that occurs without fertilization and not involving meiosis. Apomictic parthenogenesis is a very good example of the apomixis that take place in rubus or blackberries, where the egg cell is produced through mitosis, and then it develops into the embryo directly without prior fertilization. Second one is parthenogenesis, where the formation of seeds take place directly from the ovum without the fertilization of the ovum. Especially this is the normal process in some invertebrates and lower plants. Cyclic parthenogenesis is well displayed in aphids, and in honeybees also it takes place. So parthenogenesis never produces viable embryo, though, because unfertilized eggs lack specific instructions about the gene expression from the sperm. Neoteny, this is the condition in which an organism reaches without losing all of its juvenile characteristics. This is the reproduction in the larval phase of the organism. Typically, examples would include becoming sexually viable while it is still in a larval stage, or retention of gills in an adult. So this was the chapter reproduction in organism. It was a general but very important chapter. So if you have any doubt, do write me on my email ID provided here. You can ask me questions by any suitable means. So here I am concluding this chapter. Thanks for patience listening.